Podnutz Pro. Podnutz Pro number 26. If you're asking yourself, what is this show about? It's pretty simple. This is where we take you from being the PC at home tech and we take you to the small business arena. Deal with firewalls and routers and all them things that you might see and you go, what the hell is that? So I would try to explain it to you. Let me introduce the star of the show, the LeBron James of Podnutz Pro, Matt Rainey.
I
What's
don't know
up, bro?
what that means. Hey, not too much. I don't know what that means. I guess it's a basketball reference. I don't
Yeah.
watch much basketball.
Oh,
But
okay.
I'm assuming that's good. So hello, everybody.
And then, of course, you all know me. My name is Lalo from BetterPCTech.com. How you doing? And thank you for joining us. How's your week, Matt?
It has been long and not much sleep. But other than that, pretty good. How about you?
Cool, man. Had an awesome weekend. Had last Friday off, so spend the whole weekend on the beach and just enjoying the good Florida weather and the ocean. So,
Oh, that's good. It was really, really hot where I am. It was over 100 degrees this
wow.
weekend. It was miserable.
I must say here in Florida, I think that we're just accustomed to it because I've been here going on 8 years now, and the heat doesn't bother me as much anymore. I mean, it's still miserable. Don't get me wrong, but but it's not like when I first moved down here. I was like, geez, I want to go back home. So
Yeah, I've been here for 38 years and it's still hot. So
it's okay. I guess some people don't get acclimated. But share with the world here what the topic is for this show because you did not give a hint last week, my friend.
I did not. But before we get to that, I've got one other thing I want to talk about
Yes.
real quick.
Okay.
So today, or actually last week, I decided I need to upgrade my small business server certification to the 2008 version. I just haven't had time lately. It takes an hour out of my day to go take a test, and I just don't have time. I don't think about it. So I decided last week I was going to schedule a test for today and just go take the test. So I did that this morning and upgraded my small business specialist certification to 2008. That was an interesting exam. Without saying anything about the test itself,
Okay.
I just thought it was interesting how Microsoft. I'm interested to know how much market share Microsoft thinks Windows Phone has. I'll just say that.
Windows Phone.
Right, Windows Mobile Phone. So
And you were taking what certification again?
the small business specialist. So it's a little bit of everything.
Okay.
Like we talked about before, customers are mobile and they want access from everywhere and from all their devices. So I went and took that this morning. I was a little nervous because I didn't really study that much, or I bought a book and flipped through it,
Okay.
and I thought, well, that's interesting. So I was a
You were
little
like,
nervous.
server 2008. I'm ready. Let's go.
And I thought it would be interesting because I thought, well, let's just see what kind of I've taken a lot of Microsoft tests over the years, and I think they're doing a better job of getting real world questions, I think, because this test is the first one I've taken since I guess the '03 small business specialist. It's been a while. And I find they actually had real world things that I do every day. They had questions on, so I thought that was interesting. It wasn't the textbook click here, click here, click here. It was more how do you do something. I thought that was pretty good.
Yes, and I have to agree because the certifications I do have, that was one of my biggest complaints was, a lot of the questions were all hypothetical and it wasn't real world related. And I'm actually pursuing some other certifications, Matt, that work is allowing me to pursue. So I'm looking forward to these questions. So they are more real world and related.
This one, well, some of course were ridiculous, but because I think they have to have some ridiculous ones. But I think it was more of a process. If you want to do this, and it's a real request that I get, how do you do it? So I didn't mind those questions, and I'm glad they were real world because I work in the real world. I don't really work in the book, so.
Cool, man. All right.
And I used to have a lot of certifications. When I started, NT was still around, but Windows 2000 was coming. So,
NT 3.5, 3.51, or 4.0? Which one were you an expert on?
well, not an expert, but we worked with four.
Okay.
We had some older ones as well, but the main ones were four. So I skipped the NT4 certifications, went to Windows 2000, got all the way to MCSE on Windows 2000. But for the kind of work I was doing, it was really overkill. But that was the buzzword: MCSE, MCSE, this and that. So I got it, and then went to the MCSA. Thought, well, this more closely matches what I do.
Okay.
So I got the MCSA for, I think it was 2000 and 2003.
So,
Then the
so you got the full cert suite for 2000. Then I imagine you got the upgrade for 03.
Right, I got the upgrade through '03 for both. I think I did the MCSE and the MCSA for '03 as well. And then the small business specialist certification community came out, so I got that. And with '08, I looked at it and it's just, I think if you're going to get certified, you should get certified in what you actually do.
I agree.
So there's no reason for me to get certified in server and the high level, like the MCSE equivalent of whatever the certification is out now, because I don't do it. And I don't want to be what they call a paper cert, where I can read the book and I can pass the test, but unless you're doing it from day to day, it's meaningless.
No, and I totally agree, and that's why I never pursued the small business cert, because that's not the environment I work in. I do work in the high end level like environment, so you have a good point. Why would I get that cert if it would be a paper cert, as you would say.
Now, what certifications? They're Microsoft certifications that you're going to be getting, or?
Yeah, the where I work at, they've approved the CBT Nuggets, the whole site suite license, so I get access to all the Microsoft stuff, the Cisco stuff, all the major certifications. So I'm gonna definitely take advantage of all that. So if you haven't checked out a CBT Nuggets, those are pretty good videos. But
Yeah, I've seen them before. So right, that's exactly right. There's no reason for, and the way you approach them, as we discussed before, is small business server loves their wizards,
yeah,
and of course, an enterprise level, you don't
yeah,
have that.
never.
You need more granular control than small business servers is intended. So you approach those differently. So
Sure, and then I won't find a point here with certification. It's much easier, in my opinion, to obtain a certification in something that you actually do on a daily basis, because it sticks in your head. It makes sense because you're touching it, you're actually doing it every day. So
right. So that's that. I just wanted to mention that. I know some people like certification, some people don't. I just, as part of the small business specialist partner program, I have to keep current on it. So
gotcha.
take advantage of that. That's the main reason why I do that. So
Cool.
so the next thing I want to talk about is something that people may or may not have heard of. I'm interested to see in the chat if anybody's heard of this. And I'll say how I came across it a while back is I've got an email from a client that they had a vendor that was trying to send mail out on behalf of the company. So this email was not originating from the server, my client's Exchange server. It was coming from their mail servers. So the way spam lists works and these email filtering, they can tell that something's going on and it's not coming from, or no, actually they wanted to make sure that mail got delivered even though it's coming from somewhere else. So they asked me to create an SPF record.
Now, SPF, what does that stand for the good people at home?
And that's exactly what I thought when I got the email. Now, of course, not, I got the email. I thought, SPF, okay, sure, I can do that. And of course, first thing you do is Google SPF record. So SPF record is Sender Policy Framework. And it's a standard that is relatively new, but the purpose of this is to verify that mail that is sent from your domain is authorized to be sent.
Okay.
So in the case of this client, they had me add an SPF record that included their mail servers as okay to send mail. Now, we can't get into a whole discussion of headers and how the specifics of the spam engines work, but we'll take a broad overview. And what I do want to do from this show, maybe starting forward, is basic notes. I'm going to have a post in the forums. So if you're listening and you haven't been to the forums, podnutz.com/forums, look in the section for shows, Podnutz Pro, and I'll put some of the links about this in the post titled episode, whatever episode this is. So you can check that to read more about it. But the sender protection framework is designed. It's hard to. I'm going to try and explain this in an overview. So, and I've got notes, but as I'm reading, I'm thinking I need to go more basic.
And I agree with Matt. This topic is pretty intensive, so we're gonna try to do a overview so you have a good foundation. But if you're listening to this podcast, don't think that you're gonna walk away after an hour knowing the ins and outs of it about this. But no. Go ahead, Matt.
Okay, so everybody's seen email messages. You get calls from clients saying, "I got an email that's saying it's from me to me," or somebody gets an email, it's got fake sender addresses. It's not from that sender, and you know it's not from that sender. So a lot of spam has fake sender addresses. The way that SPF uses DNS as a lookup. So when you create an SPF record in your domain, you're basically telling it these are the servers that are authorized to send mail for this domain. And it's not a common thing yet. I think I read an article that maybe 12% of all domains use SPF records, but it's becoming more popular. So when you're troubleshooting email, you need to know that these SPF records do exist, because you might have a user who can't send mail legitimately, but their company may have implemented an SPF record, and where he's trying to send mail is not listed in the policy. So what it does is these SPF records, it looks at the hello, and basically the let me get the name for it. Now, I don't know if you know, but you know when you get an email address, when you get an email from somebody, it says it's from, let's say it's from Lalo.
Right.
Now, that's a display name, basically. It doesn't mean anything. And email servers don't even look at that, really. What they're going to look at is what's in the mail headers as the header sender address, or the from, or the hello address, HELO. So it looks for that, and that's easily spoofed. So this SPF record looks into that. It sees the address of where it's coming from, and it checks the domain to see if you have an SPF record. And if you do, it looks at those addresses in there to see if you can send mail. So it's important when you're creating this SPF record to make sure you create it correctly, because if you create an SPF record for your domain and you don't list your mail servers that are responsible for sending mail, then you could be in effect blocking people from receiving your mail, which is exactly what the opposite is that you want to do. Now, and I'll post some links in that forum. There are quite a few sites that walk you through a wizard on how to create this SPF record. And this is just a text record that you're going to create. It says something like V equals SPF1, and then it's got some variables behind it. And those variables are what these wizards help you go through. It'll ask you things like, does your MX record, did the servers where your MX records point send mail? That may be yes or no. In a lot of cases, people have spam filtering services, so your MX record may not be your outgoing mail server. So it walks you through a list, and on the screen he's showing one wizard, and this is actually a wizard from Microsoft. Now I've used this wizard before. It's not as good as some other wizards that I've seen, but I'm gonna have links to both.
Okay.
In the chat. One of them kind of explains why it's asking more or better. It explains there's, and I don't want to get into all the records. There's hard fails, there's soft fails, meaning if I send you an email from somewhere that I'm not in my office, so I'm not sending it from my mail server, I can say this is a soft fail, which is one of the variables. And it just means it's not going to be rejected more than likely. It's just going to say, you need to look at this message more carefully, or tag it that it's possible spam. As opposed to a hard fail where it should just reject it completely if it's not matching one of the variables in your SPF record. Now, also in this link that I'm going to post is, because it's pretty easy. If you have an Exchange server in your house, that's pretty much the only address you're going to be sending mail from.
Right, unless you have multiple ones, but in a small business environment, you would not see that.
Right. So normally you're going to have one outgoing mail server. It may be your MX record also. It may be, you may have an A record for it. Of course you should. If you have an MX record pointing to mail.podnutz.com, then of course you should have an A record for mail.podnutz.com. So you may have multiple DNS resources that point to the same IP address. And in this link that I'll send, one of the most common mistakes that people do is they include the same server more than once. So they may say, I can send mail from my A record, my MX record, and this IP address, but they're all through the same thing. In that instance, that's a mistake. It's causing the receiving mail server to do more DNS lookups than needed to check and make sure that all of those addresses are valid. It's checking one, then the other, then the other. So I know this can be kind of complicated, but the reason I want to talk about this is it's going to help reduce spam if this is adopted globally, even if you have a domain registered that you're not even using. Podnutz1.com for some reason. If you have that registered, you can still create an SPF record that's basically a null SPF record, meaning no mail should ever be sent from this domain.
Ah, okay, cool.
So that's one way you can help your reputation for your domain, is to create these records.
Yeah, and you might ask, excuse me, why is this important? In a business might approach you and say, one of the companies that I used to work for was a contractor, and they had a spam problem. And so their clients, that were potential clients, would get these spam, from Bob, blah, 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 and it would be just a garbled, the message that would make no sense, and then they'll pick up the phone, and there'll be this uncomfortable conversation saying, did you, let's send me this email? Both parties had no idea they was spam. So what Matt is describing here would bring that to a halt.
And there are many ways to do this. There's a sender ID, which is similar to SPF, but the way that it works is a little different. And a sender ID is called SPF 2.0, which is not the same thing as SPF. It's just somehow got named SPF 2.0, but it's not SPF. It's sender ID.
Right. I believe it works. It works the same way, but how they validate the email is different.
Right. So they're similar name for some reason, but they're not similar. And they try and do the same thing, but by different methods.
Okay.
So when you're creating these addresses, like I said, use the wizard. Most important, don't make sure you're not using the same address more than once. So if, in a small business environment, I would more than likely just use, in that wizard you're going to follow, just the IP address of your outgoing mail server, your public IP. And that's because it's not forcing the receiving mail server to do a DNS lookup, it's got the IP address. If you just put the mail.podnutz.com as one of the allowed servers, it's got to do a lookup on that. So it's one less thing to do for the receiving mail server. And the reason you want to do this is not that you're going to receive less spam for the company who creates this record. It's going to hopefully reduce the spam that goes out in your name. And this protects your domain's reputation. So if mail is being sent out saying it's from your domain, at the very least, the people who are going to get it are going to think you're sending them spam. And they're going to think it's intentional from your company. This is from podnutz.com address. He must be sending me something bad, or he's sending me junk. They're not going to know that the headers don't actually come from your address. The users don't know. They see the address in their mail program, and they think that's who it's from. So we all know we can't train users to look at mail headers. So
Right.
if you can limit the mail that's sent out on your behalf or seeming to be on your behalf, it'll help your company. And if everybody did it, we'd have a lot less spam. So I think a few years ago, an article I read said that 2% of companies did this. Now it's up to 12%. So it is gaining in popularity as a way to combat this spam. It's a quick record to create. If you can control your own DNS records, which hopefully you do, you can go to this wizard and basically copy and paste. They're going to give you the exact record. And he's showing one online right now, which is pretty long.
Yeah, I went to that openspf.org where they have a wizard on there. So,
and there's a lot of IPs in there. So
yeah.
So, and basically the record it gives you, you copy it, you paste it in as a text file, and that's it. And there are tools. I know I've mentioned MX Toolbox before. One of those tools is an SPF lookup. So you click on the SPF tab, enter the domain name, and it'll tell you if that domain has an SPF record or not. There's also ways that you can email an address from the domain, and it does an SPF test to see if you're able to send mail from that IP address, or from
cool.
to make sure that it's working correctly.
And that's from the MX Toolbox?
I think the MX Toolbox does a lookup, and I have a link somewhere about the one that has a test email.
Okay, great. And again, for those that are listening and watching live, Matt will have a whole bunch of links in the forum for everything that he's talking about.
Now, this is not going to work if you more than likely are having mail hosted off-site somewhere, like with an ISP. This would be the ISP, because I can't imagine you calling tech support for Cox and asking them, I need to know all of your mail records or your outgoing mail servers. They may tell you, they may not. This is going to work best in a business environment where you have an Exchange server and you control the outgoing mail. Now, I know a lot of people use Google Apps. Google is using the SPF record. So if you have Google Apps and you have your domain hosted there, there is an SPF record that Google Apps will give you to create in your records. Either if you're setting it up, it'll tell you, create this record if you can, or if you've already set it up, you can go into the help and just do a search for SPF record, and it'll tell you what their SPF record should be for your domain. And from what I remember, it was a pretty broad one because I was testing one. And I'm going to pull one up right now. It was pretty vague. This one basically said include spf.google.com and then all. So basically it's that record's not doing much. But if you want to read about the links, you can see what that record does. It's really a kind of a broad one. Now, it's important to know, again, if you have domains, do the null record, which hopefully will limit spam going out. It's also important to know this isn't going to stop everything. Some spammers will actually create an SPF record for their spam to bypass anybody doing SPF checks. And it's going to be a broad thing. It might say, I'm going to have this whole public range, and it might be a whole ISP's subnet. So it's not narrowed down, but it says if it's coming from anywhere on this subnet or this block from Cox, it's okay. So they try and bypass it. So
Okay, gotcha.
if you don't have an SPF record, somebody might try and spoof one for your domain. So just create it to be safe, so nobody tries to bypass that. Computer Pro said, what's the star thing from the past? Oh, he said, never mind. Sorry, I was just reading the chat. Yes, this is a big, thick, heavy Apple t-shirt. I thought it was appropriate to wear on the day that I passed my last Microsoft test. So this may have been a little confusing, I know, and I could spend probably 3 hours explaining F records. When I go manage we manage a few hundred domains for clients, and when I have to go in and manage DNS for something, I make a point now to go in there and create the SPF record for them.
How long does it take you to create this record?
Wizard and most of my people just have one outgoing mail server. I'll create one with their specific IP address.
Okay.
And it's just after that, really, I can copy and paste it because I just edit the IP address. So if it might say V equal IP4 colon their IP address, and then depending on how you want it to act, there's a ending -all or -fail. There's some endings you can do, the end modifier. So I can just copy and paste that. It takes a few seconds. Okay. It doesn't take much time at all. Now let's say a client switches their public IP address. Now, of course, if that happens, I'm going to have to go into DNS and edit their A record for let's say podnutz.com to point to the new IP address. Of course, you also have to edit the SPF record at that point too, because you don't want your SPF record pointing to the old IP address anymore. You want to update that to the new one. So it's one more thing to have to check or to change when you have an update, but I think it's going to be worth it.
Right, especially if you have everything documented, right?
Yep. And in this case, this client, they wanted to make sure that mail they were sending out was going to get through. So any mail now sent from that company, it's not going to guarantee it's going to get through, but there is an SPF record, meaning whoever has control of their DNS records is saying it's okay for this IP address to send mail in addition to my own email address or to my own IP address. So it's hopefully going to allow mail to be delivered. And these are marketing emails. I think they might do some invoicing from this company. So they want those emails to be received. They don't want them blocked saying, no, this is not coming from the right domain. It's supposed to be coming from over here, and it's coming from here. So by editing this record, this SPF record, and adding it to the DNS zone, it validates it that mail is coming because that you had to have access to create that record in DNS. So hopefully this will allow spam to be reduced if people adopt it and take the time to create these records.
Great. So like you have stated, it won't necessarily stop spam, but it will reduce it dramatically because it has to check the source, or the IP.
It checks the source. Like I said, there's different modifiers. You can say if it's not coming from this, you can just mark it as spam possibly. There's modifiers where you should block it. So it all depends on how you want it to act. So there's a fail. The SP in like the end modifier at the end will say fail or dash fail instead of tilde fail. Dash fail means it should be a hard fail. You shouldn't accept it. The tilde, squiggly line fail is a soft fail. It could mean you can accept it, but it may be spam, or you need to check more. So it all depends on how you want to create the record, but it will help reduce spam. And that's, again, spam sent out saying that it's from you, not the spam you're receiving. So this is different. Spam you're receiving, you want to implement some kind of spam filtering server. And hopefully your spam filtering server is doing these kind of lookups to either accept or reject mail. So you might include this, and of course the amount of spam you receive or your clients receive won't change. So just remember that. It's not to reduce spam you receive. It's reduce spam that is sent in your name. That's important. Important distinction.
Yes, that's a good point.
So that's SPF records. Like I said, I didn't know they existed until a few months ago when a client asked me to do it. So I started reading about it, and I thought it was worth doing. And so I've been adding it to all the domains possible that when I have to go in and modify their DNS for something.
No, and in fact, me and Matt had this conversation on last week, and I had no idea what this was. And I've been dealing with Exchange the boxes for a few years, so definitely a good tip. I wish I would have known this. So.
All right, and again, there's a lot to read about this. There'll be notes in the forum because it is worth reading about, in my opinion. And there'll be links. There'll be links to wizards, to how to create them. There'll be lists to doing a lookup to see if you have them. There'll be links to pretty much cover everything about this topic that you could possibly want to know.
Yeah, it's one of these topics that if you really want to know tons of information and the details and where it came from and the how it all evolved, I can do it over a couple cups of coffee.
Yeah, you want some light reading, and I did read it all. That's part of why I'm so tired right now.
All right, man, cool. Let me just take a few minutes here to talk about a product that Steve is coming out with, and put it up on the screen real quick. Oh, that's Matt. That's not the product. Here we go. Do you want to learn how to podcast? Steve is hosting a webinar Saturday, June 25th and Sunday, June 26th from 10 a.m. to 5 p.m. He just updated the website, howtopodcast.biz, with all of the available details. You can learn how to start your own podcast. He'll tell you what you need to actually get started, the equipment that you should use, how to record your first show, how to get on iTunes, get a bunch of listeners, how to make money on podcasting. Steve is the man. He has released over 500 shows. He gets over 50,000 downloads a month and 1 million hits per month. So if I were to listen to anybody, it'd probably be him. So again, it'd be on the weekend of June 25th, 20 and 26th. I'll be on there too. I don't know what I'm gonna say, but I'll be drinking coffee. Again, it's howtopodcast.biz. So, all right, man. Again, good for those that were listening before. They were just a general overview of what SPF is. So,
right. If y'all like SPF, we can have a whole show where we just talk about nothing but SPF records.
A couple shows.
Modifier. Yeah.
Yeah.
I'll have to doze off on that too, but no. I think this topic is best to just introduce it and let you know it exists. And if you're interested, you need to read about it before you implement it on your record. So,
yes, sir.
All right, we got a few emails, I think.
Yeah, man. And let me read the one about SOTs.
Oh, yeah.
Was last week that we're talking about SOTs, or the week before?
I believe it was 2 weeks ago.
All right. It's from Michael. Matt and Lalo, the two of you do a great job with the show, but I have to write in about the most recent show. The flippant attitude about SOX compliance is really out of place on a show that is usually very good. You suggested that if a tech does not follow the guidelines outlined in SOX and HIPAA, that nothing bad will come out of it. You infer that the worst thing that could happen is an auditor would let you know what you need to change. That all may be true up until the point that the network is compromised. If a network that requires HIPAA or SOX compliance is compromised and you were in charge of that network, you most likely will be fined. The penalty for HIPAA violation isn't career ending for the most part, but you will be tasked in bringing the network to compliance, which can be a nuisance. A HIPAA auditor will not accept some simple WPA2 encryption as fulfillment of the guidelines.
Yes, and I replied back to Michael, and we had a few emails back and forth. And the part about the fine, he was more speaking about the company as an internal IT staff, meaning the company would be fined. As an IT worker, if I went to a company and they weren't in compliance, I wouldn't be fined because I was acting as an agent of the company. But as I replied to Michael, I think maybe he misunderstood. I don't believe I ever said that you should ignore any guidelines that are given to you. I think pretty sure what I said is, if the company is bound by HIPAA guidelines or Sarbanes-Oxley guidelines, that they will let you know and they will give you rules that you have to comply with. And of course, if you're given the rules, you have to comply with them. But the main point is, I know a lot of techs go in and they hear business support regulations. Most companies are not bound by those. So if the company is bound by those, they will let you know. And if they give you guidelines, you need to follow them.
Right.
So
and,
of course, don't ignore any guidelines that you're given.
Right. And that was and if it was taken that way, I do apologize. But SOX is very serious. The two major corporations that I worked for before, they had lawyers and they had they had their pre-audits. I mean, they take it very seriously. So again, but it's something in a small business environment, I think, is a little bit different. Where if there are rules to comply, you would know ahead of time that these rules exist.
Right, and if you're doing work for a company who is bound by Sarbanes-Oxley, you're more than likely not going to have a one-man IT shop. It's going to be a larger place. These are larger companies. We do have some clients that do have to comply with Sarbanes-Oxley, and it's a pain. But we were given specific rules to follow and guidelines to follow. Mm-hmm. We didn't go into that company and just decide to implement these things on our own. They said, here's what you have, here's what your IT policy has to be. Mm-hmm. And in fact, when this started, they did have an auditor come in and meet with us and say, and he gave us rules. Here's what you need. Here's what I'm looking for. Here's what you have to do and implement these. So that's what we did. So just the point I was making on that show is, don't be obsessed with thinking every company has to follow by these rules. If they are, they will let you know, and then you can follow them. Right,
and because there are folks that do this the full time. I think what Matt's saying is that I wouldn't think they would expect you to actually put them in compliance, and you were just following and the rules. And like Computer Pro said in a chat room, kind of view them like the IRS. You don't want them showing up at your door because it's not a pretty sight.
So in the case of we have more clients that fall under HIPAA guidelines.
Okay.
So even if I went to a client's office, I never did work with them before, and they said, I want a wireless network. Okay, we'll put a wireless network in for you. I'm going to do standard things, WPA2 encryption. I'm going to have a complex password, this and that. Now, if 6 months later they get audited by HIPAA, and HIPAA says you didn't follow these guidelines, the company may call me and say, hey, these guidelines weren't followed. And of course, my response is, you didn't give me any guidelines. So had they given me, at that point, I wouldn't like to say, well, if you give me the guidelines, I'll make the changes. that you need. So if you don't know, you can't follow the guidelines. So if you want to ask, you can go ahead and ask, but most companies do not fall into this.
Right. And for a corporate environment, just to give you an idea of some of the things I had to do, certain rooms had to be locked with we had keypads. I had to show proof that I checked logs, and I mean it's like the list goes on and on. And again, we had a whole team of lawyers that make sure that we were in compliance. So if we did get audited, which we did, that we all passed. So
yeah,
but
and a lot of companies will hire a third party auditor to come in and do a test audit and tell you what you missed
and
or
that's
what
what
you
they
don't
did to
have.
us. The we used to call it the pre-audit, were like the ones that would find that some of the things that weren't in compliance, and then you got a nice stern email saying you better fix this, and then like at that point, you know, you might or might not get audited once again. So again, take SOX and HIPAA less seriously, and so. All right, Michael, I think we addressed your email, and thank you for your input.
Yep.
Alrighty, let's see what else we got. Oh, this font is really small. All right, this is from Peter. So, hey, Steve and the rest of the crew. I wanted to see if you could all shed some light on some of the ways you all obtain discounted parts. I am in the starting stages of my computer repair business, and my plan was to use local stores such as Fry's, which is an awesome store, a Micro Center, and CompUSA for the meanwhile until I can find a reliable, cheap source for parts. I am talking about normal stuff such as hard drives, cables, RAM, and other stuff like that. Also, can you share some knowledge on some of the most needed items a mobile repair business will need to keep on hand so I won't need to make constant trips? I don't have enough business yet to buy in bulk, so this partner will have to offer discounts on minimum amounts of inventory. That's kind of hard. Thanks for the show and keep this site going. I think it's a great idea, and I think that I found your site and started to listen to the shows. It really helped me get started in my business. I think it gave it a lot of insight into many aspects of the business, and also the forums and the community is a great place also. The people that hang out in the forums are great and very helpful. Now that my eyes hurt from the small font, Matt, I'm gonna say about that.
Well, okay. I'll start with the first part. The parts. I think I might be a little different than a lot of people just starting out. We have accounts with Tech Data, Cinex, some major distributors that we get our parts through. Now you can apply to get reseller accounts through those places, so that's going to be the cheapest place you're going to get parts. But they don't accept everybody. They want you to have a certain amount of purchasing per month or per 6 months or annually. They don't want to just give an account to everybody's going to buy a hard drive every 2 weeks.
Right.
So you got to have volume to buy from these places. Short of that, if I did not have those resources, I would probably maybe podnutz.com/Amazon for some parts.
There you go.
I don't like buying new things on eBay. I'd probably stick with, if you're going to order it. And the thing is, hardware is not that, the markup is not there for most hardware. A hard drive you might make a few dollars on, no matter where you buy it.
Right.
You can't buy, if you go to Amazon and see it for 85, you really can't sell it for 120, because the client's going to know, why is it so much? I think you can get away with selling it whatever it sells for in the store. So if you see a 500 gig drive at Fry's for 95, and you can get it from Amazon for 85, you can sell it for 95.
Yeah, most of the markup here is with the software and whatnot. But like you stated, if you're just starting up and don't have much business yet, and that's a problem that I had, I couldn't get any inventory because I wasn't gonna spend a pony up the money for inventory that I knew that was gonna sit there on a shelf, forever. So I was forced, like you stated, to buy 2 or 3 hard drives at a time, or I just couldn't do it in bulk.
Right. And if I was just starting, I wouldn't do it in bulk either. In fact, for most things, especially larger things, I would just have the client buy it directly.
Hmm.
Because otherwise, you got to worry about tax. One, if you're buying something and reselling it, you've got to charge sales tax.
Right.
Now you've got to worry about all that, um, and you've got to worry about getting paid from the customer. So if you buy even just one computer from somebody, I buy one computer to resell somebody. Well, I'm out $800 until they decide to pay for it.
Exactly.
Now, we buy 15, 20, 30 computers at a time on order that we resell or when we get orders. Now, again, with the major distributors, if you apply for these, Tech Data, Cinex, you usually also are applying for a credit line. So you don't have to pay for it right away. You might be on certain terms with them that you can just order it and hey, you have 30 days to pay or 60 days to pay, whatever it is,
Right.
with your line of credit. So, of course, doing that, you have to have good personal credit if you don't have business credit to get that going.
Right. And also, and what I would do is use a new way to make a wish list, and I would tell the customer what to buy, and they would just pay for it and let me know, once the parts that came in, or I would have them shipped to my
Yeah,
house.
and that way that you don't have to wait on them. When they're ready to order, they order it.
Exactly.
So it's out of their pocket right away. You're not worried about collecting. You're not worried about tax.
Right, and and you can mark it up. I've seen some people charge for the fact that you're like the middleman and you're kind of advising them what to buy, but that's totally up to you. But your choices are limited when you are just starting out. Like Matt's saying, when you have a vendor account, life becomes a lot easier. So.
Right. And I don't think there's anything wrong if a client wants 5 new computers. I don't see anything wrong with going over there, going on Dell.com, and consulting to get the computer that they need. I mean,
No.
you can make more money on the consulting of what they buy than if you just buy it for them.
I'm gonna have to agree because ask yourself how many times do friends or family, I get at least twice a week. Hey, I'm gonna buy a new laptop. What do you recommend? Because they have no idea what to buy. So you can't charge for that consulting fee.
Right. So even if it's just an hour, let's say your rates, let's just say pick a number, $85 an hour.
Right.
Even if you just charge 1 hour for consulting, and they buy one computer might cost $900.
Mm-hmm.
If you bought it yourself and resold it, you probably wouldn't charge. There probably wouldn't be a $90 markup, or be close to it. Most hardware is marked up maybe 10-15%. So
Mm-hmm.
now the second part about what do you keep on hand? Well, again, we're a little different. We keep a lot of stuff. I have a whole room full of parts. We're a little different. I think the things that you need to keep on hand are things you need that you may not have time to order, mainly to keep things or get things back up or to keep things running. So I would say a few power supplies for some desktops. That's a quick fix. If a power supply goes out, you can change it, order another one. That gets them back up and running if needed. I'd have a few switches in stock, 8-port, 24-port, some small, some larger. I would have different size patch cables, 3, 7, 15, whatever, just a range of sizes. Those aren't that much. Even if you just have 5 of each. I'd keep some battery backups. And what we do is we keep small ones, 550s or 600s from APC. And then we keep one large one in for servers.
Okay.
So a SmartUps 1500, we'll keep one of those in stock because if a SmartUps on a server goes down, they don't really want to wait for you to order one.
Right.
They really want it now. So
Yeah, and when I used to have my small business, I actually went to Walmart and bought them tubs, with the drawers. And like you stated, I kept hard drives and power supplies and video cards and mice and keyboard and patch cables, and it's just a tub. I just kept in the back of my car when I made, and if I needed to grab a part, it was right there.
yeah,
Granted, we would order that part, or I would, because these parts were used. I always wanted to let the customer a new part, but at least troubleshooting became a lot easier. I didn't have to bring the PC back and all that good stuff.
yeah, and you'll accumulate things as you go.
Oh,
So
yeah.
I've got 100 video cards. I know they all work, but it's good for troubleshooting. if I've got a thing, I might grab a video card, stick it in. Does it solve your problem? Yes. And I'll tell them, okay, this is a used part. I can sell it to you for this much, or we can just use it until the new part comes in, and here's how much the new one would cost. So
Mhm.
I let them know that it's used. I never put a used part in without telling somebody.
Right.
Um,
And I would never do. I also did the same thing, and some people wanted to buy a used part. Now let them know,
yeah.
it's used. I can't guarantee it. They said I don't care. It's up and running and it works. Okay.
Right, and on those I don't carry any warranty.
Exactly.
And they ask, "What's the warranty?" I say, "Well, the warranty's up right now. As soon as I put it in, the warranty's up."
And then in my invoice when they paid, I put used a video card. A customer's aware. All that good
Yeah,
stuff.
and I do call it. I think it's Computer Pro. He says call it refurb. I do. Yeah, we do say refurb parts, but we don't warranty. And I say I don't warranty. It depends. If I know I've got 10 video cards or 50 video cards in the cabinet, I may say this got a 30-day warranty for the part because I know I got more in the cabinet I can just swap it out with. Now, we also keep some hard drives. Or if I was on a budget, even still, I'd keep some hard drives. I'd probably keep. We do a lot of server work, so you want some enterprise drives that are rated for RAID, because you don't want to stick just a regular desktop hard drive that's not rated for RAID in the server, because the RAID arrays will just keep going offline. So you want some that are rated for RAID, but more just some basic SATA hard
Sorry.
drives.
The dogs are barking.
So I keep a few hard drives, a couple at least, and that's just if a hard drive goes out, you want to be able to put a hard drive back in and get them up and running. So, now we do a lot of server work, so we keep, like I said, we keep one SmartUps 1500 in stock, but we also might keep a couple of or one or two batteries, not the full unit, but just the batteries. So if the battery goes out, I can go stick that in real quick, and they're back up and running without a whole new unit. So that was what I think would be the basic thing. Just things that you want to get them at least back up and running right now. You start thinking about everything that you could need, then you're going to have way too much stuff.
Yeah. I just learned that as I did more jobs throughout the years of what the problems I encountered met the most, and I kind of learn from that, because once you make too many trips, I get sick of it. You're like, okay, I'm gonna carry a couple of these on me.
Yeah. And you want to do like the Apple approach. You want to have 90% of the stuff covered. And 90% of the stuff is hard drives, power supplies, battery backups, that kind of stuff, patch cables.
What you call this? The Apple approach?
Yeah, don't they make they make 90% of the features they have because 10% are junk. So they concentrate on the good stuff, which is why Apple works so good.
Okay.
But that's what I would have, and that's just off the top of my head. Power supplies, switches, patch cables, battery backups, hard drives.
Yeah, and that doesn't that doesn't even include the tools that you carry and your software tools and everything. So.
Right, that's just hardware, and most things can be ordered. And if I need a part that needs to be overnighted and I don't have it, we just overnight it, and of course we give the client the option. Overnight shipping's $80. Do you want it overnight or do you want it ground? And I let them make that decision. So
yeah, and then again, like Matt's saying, let them make that choice. I never told someone I could have it in 3 or 4 days. I would give them, you have the option of getting it overnight for this price, or you can get it 3 or 4 days. There are some people that say yes, I want it tomorrow. Okay.
Oh yeah.
They'll pay for it.
I've had people overnight battery. I had one client who we did not have one in stock, a SmartUps 1500, because we usually do. We had a client who did not have one in stock, or that had one that needed one right away, and we didn't have it in stock. We had to overnight a SmartUps 1500, and those are pretty heavy.
Yeah. And
that overnight shipping was very expensive.
Okay.
But they wanted it and they paid for it.
Hey.
So it's up to them. You're not gonna plan for every contingency, and especially jobs that are planned, you can order what you need for those. So I would just stick with things you need to either keep running or get back up running quickly.
Great.
a RAM upgrade. You don't need to keep RAM in stock because somebody might want to upgrade RAM. If they want to upgrade RAM, find out what they need and order some RAM. Is my philosophy.
Cool. I don't think we have any more emails. I think those are the only two, or was there more that you might have gotten?
No. I think that's it.
All right, man. Cool. Well, we've hit the magical hour mark on the dot, man. You're pretty good.
Wow. Yeah. I would have liked to cover more in SPF records, but the thing is, once you start down that road, it's hard to stop. So.
Yeah. No, I definitely agree. It's like talking about a TCP/IP packet. All the headers and all that good information and version 4 and version 6, and you all would probably be put to sleep by the end of the show.
Yeah. So check the forums later on. There'll be some links. You can have some good reading and good diagnostic tools and the wizards, and they'll be there. So
cool. Matt, is there a teaser for the topic for next week, or that's gonna be a surprise?
I think next week we won't be on next week. I think next week is the week that we will be off. But the week after that, I can tell you it's going to be a show just about some interesting jobs that I've had lately. No real specific topic, but I've been jotting down some interesting jobs. So I'm going to cover some of those, and some of them have just some basic troubleshooting steps, how to get there, and what happened with those jobs. So just more of a overview of what's, and I might have 20 jobs in a day, some longer, some shorter, some 5 minutes, some 3 hours, some I'm going 3-4 jobs at a time on my 3 monitors. So I have a lot of interesting things that you maybe you do see, maybe you don't see, but we're going to cover some of those.
All right, then cool. That's a good time because my dogs are going nuts and I have no idea why. But where is it that people can find you, Matt?
If they look, they can find me on Twitter sometimes, Podnutz Pro on Twitter, or they can email me, matt@podnutz.com.
Awesome. And you can find me at lalo@podnutz.com. If you have any comments or emails about the show, send us an email. I'll make sure that you state somewhere in the body of the email that you want to read on the show. Any type of feedback is greatly appreciated. You can also find me at betterpctech.com. I'm still working on the videos. My let's just say my daytime job is keeping me pretty busy. So I'm still working on it bits and pieces at a time. So I know I told everyone it should be out by June 1st, and obviously that's not the case. But I'm working on them. Other than that, thank you for partaking in the show and all your comments and all your emails. It's outstanding. Anything else, Matt?
That's it. Good night, everybody. Thanks for listening.
All right, then.